Biomed, Nexus. Daily updates, your essential biotech, medtech, and pharma recap. No noise, just what matters. TLDR, a leading medical journal retracted the pivotal study behind Amgen's Tavneos, avacopan, according to Biospace. It is the latest blow to a drug that has been in the FDA's crosshairs since January. The agency asked Amgen to pull it voluntarily last month, and Europe's CHMP recommended revoking its approval last week. B1 Medicines said its BTK inhibitor, Brukinsa, zanubrutinib, plus rituximab, cut the risk of progression or death by 43% versus bendamustine plus rituximab in the Phase 3 Mangrove trial in previously untreated mantle cell lymphoma, HR057P00001. It is the first Phase 3 to test a chemotherapy-free regimen as a new frontline standard in MCL. Global filings are planned for the second half of 2026. Biopharma layoffs slowed again in Q2, extending a trend that started last fall, according to a fierce biotech analysis. After 2 brutal years of cuts, the pace is easing. The first half of 2026 saw 52 M&A deals, according to Biospace. The message from every corner of the industry is the same: deal-making is back. Lonza announced an expanded strategic collaboration with an unnamed US-based biopharma company, adding to a busy stretch for the CDMO sector. Executive takeaway: the Tavneos story keeps getting worse for Amgen, and it now raises a bigger question about how a drug's evidence base can come apart in public. Follow the arc. In June, the FDA flagged patient deaths and asked Amgen to pull the drug voluntarily. Amgen fought back, commissioning an independent Duke analysis to defend it. Last week, the European CHMP recommended revoking the drug's marketing authorization, and now a top journal has retracted the pivotal study that supported the approval in the first place. That is about as complete a reversal as you see for a drug that made it all the way to market. Tavneos treats ANCA-associated vasculitis, a serious autoimmune disease where patients need steroid-sparing options, so the clinical stakes for those patients are real. But the trajectory here is one-directional, and Amgen's room to defend the franchise is shrinking by the week. This is the kind of post-market unwind that makes every safety monitoring team pay attention. The B1 News is a cleaner, more encouraging story, and it matters beyond one company. Mantle cell lymphoma has historically meant chemotherapy for newly diagnosed patients. Mangrove shows that Brukinsa plus rituximab, with no chemo and no rituximab maintenance, can beat the standard bendamustine plus rituximab regimen and spare patients roughly 2 years of infusions. A 43% cut in the risk of progression or death is a strong result. Overall survival was not mature yet, and that will be the number to watch, especially since J&J and AbbVie's Imbruvica was previously withdrawn in MCL. But the direction is clear: the BTK inhibitor class keeps pushing chemo further out of blood cancer treatment. Read Full Analysis Immunology. The study behind Tavneos gets retracted. Amgen, leading medical journal, retracted the pivotal trial that supported approval of Amgen's Tavneos, avacopan, according to Biospace. It caps a rough stretch for the drug, which has faced FDA scrutiny since January. Last month, the FDA flagged patient deaths and asked Amgen to remove it from the market voluntarily. Amgen commissioned an independent analysis from Duke researchers to argue for keeping it available. Then last week, the European CHMP recommended pulling its authorization. A retraction of the underlying pivotal study is a serious escalation because it undercuts the evidence base regulators relied on to approve the drug. For Amgen, the practical question is whether it can keep Tavneos on the market at all, on either side of the Atlantic. Oncology B1's Brukinsa wins in frontline mantle cell lymphoma. ONCB1 Medicines reported positive top-line results from the Phase 3 Mangrove trial showing Brukinsa, zanubrutinib, plus rituximab reduced the risk of progression or death by 43% versus bendamustine plus rituximab in adults with previously untreated mantle cell lymphoma, HR0, 57, 95%, CI0, 43-0, 76, P0, 001. The regimen is chemotherapy-free and skips rituximab maintenance, which B1 says spares patients around 2 years of infusions. Safety was consistent with both drugs' known profiles with no new signals. Overall survival was immature at this analysis, but trended in Brukinsa's favor, and OS will be tested at the final analysis. That number carries extra weight here because J&J and AbbVie previously withdrew Imbruvica's MCL indication in the US. Mangrove also serves as the confirmatory trial for Brukinsa's 2019 accelerated approval in previously treated MCL. B1 plans global regulatory submissions in the second half of 2026. The business layoffs, slow, deal-making. Boom's 2 data points this week point in the same direction on industry health. First, biopharma layoffs slowed again in the second quarter, extending a recovery that began last fall, according to a fierce biotech analysis. After more than 42,000 job cuts across the industry in 2025, the easing pace is a meaningful signal. Second, the first half of 2026 closed with 52 M&A deals per biospace, capping the most active deal-making stretch in years. Put those together with the mood coming out of BIO 2026, which attendees described as overwhelmingly positive, and the sector looks healthier than it has since before the 2022 downturn. The caveats are familiar: FDA unpredictability, drug pricing pressure, and China competition, but the fundamentals have turned. Seedma Lonza expands a US biopharma collaboration. Lonza announced an expanded strategic collaboration with an unnamed US-based biopharmaceutical company, according to the pharma letter. Details were thin, but the deal continues a busy run for the CDMO sector, which has been consolidating and expanding capacity as onshoring incentives and complex modalities like ADCs and cell therapies drive demand for specialized manufacturing. Coming up, July 31st, Section 232 pharma tariffs effective for large companies. August 2026, Replimune RP1 FDA response. August 22, Capricor Doramia PDUFA Advisory Committee pending. Imminent revolution. Medicines CNPV filing, Lilly Foundayo T2D filing. Tracking Medicare GLP-1 Bridge first week enrollment. Launched July 1st. Read full analysis, Biomed Nexus. Pro, institutional intelligence. Brief, how a drug's evidence base comes apart. The Tavneos saga is worth studying because it shows how quickly a marketed drug's foundation can erode. The sequence over roughly 6 months, FDA scrutiny beginning in January, a June request for voluntary withdrawal tied to patient deaths, Amgen commissioning an independent Duke analysis to defend the drug, a CHMP recommendation to revoke European authorization in late June, and now the retraction of the pivotal study itself. Each step compounds the last. The voluntary withdrawal request put the drug's safety in question. The CHMP recommendation extended the doubt to a second major regulator. The study retraction goes to the root, calling into question the data that justified approval to begin with. For Amgen, the options are narrowing. Defending a drug against a safety signal is hard. Defending it after the pivotal study has been retracted is much harder. Expect pressure to accept withdrawal in at least one major market, and watch for how this affects the treatment landscape for ANCA-associated vasculitis patients who rely on steroid-sparing therapy. For the broader industry, this is a reminder that post-market evidence integrity is now a live risk, not a settled question at the time of approval. Mangrove and the march away from chemo, the BTK inhibitor class, has been steadily displacing chemotherapy across B-cell malignancies. Mangrove extends that march into frontline mantle cell lymphoma, one of the settings where chemo has remained the default for newly diagnosed patients. The result is strong, a 43% reduction in the risk of progression or death versus bendamustine plus rituximab, the standard regimen. Just as important, the Brukinsa regimen drops both chemo and rituximab maintenance, which B1 frames as sparing patients about 2 years of infusions. That is a quality-of-life argument on top of an efficacy argument. The watch item is overall survival. It was immature at this analysis. It matters more than usual here because AbbVie and J&J's Imbruvica, another BTK inhibitor, had its MCL indication withdrawn in the US after confirmatory data disappointed. Regulators and payers will want to see that Brukinsa's PFS win translates into a survival benefit, or at least does not raise the survival concerns that dogged the class before. B1 plans global filings in the second half of 2026, and this trial doubles as the confirmatory study for Brukinsa's 2019 accelerated approval in previously treated MCL. The turn in industry health 2 years of contraction appear to be giving way to recovery. Layoffs, which topped 42,000 across biopharma in 2025, slowed again in Q2. M&A hit 52 deals in the first half, more than $130 billion in value across the 33 deals over $1 billion. IPOs reopened, with 13 companies raising over $4 billion. And the mood at BIO 2026 was, by multiple accounts, the most optimistic in years. The structural drivers are intact for the second half. The patent cliff still forces large pharma to buy. Cash reserves are still deep. Biotech valuations, while recovered, still leave room. And the FDA, for all its unpredictability, has shown a more flexible posture on several rare disease and oncology filings. The risks have not vanished, but the balance has shifted from survival mode to growth mode for a large part of the sector. Visit the ProHub read. Full article. Is your company listed in the Biomed Nexus directory? 2,104 companies across 14 categories. Claim or upgrade your listing. Sponsorship slots for 2026 are limited. See packages and pricing. New Biomed Nexus signals weekly sales intelligence for life sciences BD teams. Learn more